Hey there! It's me, you know, the guy who collects video games. I say something more stupid every time I do one of these. But hello! Well, September's over, which means I get to talk about everything that I collected in September, which is great because I went to a convention this September and bought a whole bunch of cool stuff there, which means a lot of stuff that I got is not just random common pickups, it's stuff that I really needed for my collection, which means I'm really excited to talk about it here. So let's get right on that, I guess. So first things first, as I talked about last month, I went away to Buffalo to visit my friend Zoe, who is the girlfriend of my friend Dustin. She gave me a whole bunch of stuff right on the last day of August. One thing, however, that she gave me on the first day of September is the Animal Crossing memory card for GameCube. It's a little shoddy, but it works, and I didn't have this. So this officially completes my copy of Animal Crossing for GameCube. So I'm very thankful for that. Thank you very much, Zoe. That really means a lot to me. For those of you who don't know, it's a 59-block memory card that came with copies of Animal Crossing, because Animal Crossing literally requires that you save the game. So Nintendo, I guess, felt guilty that, you know, you had to buy a memory card separately, so ba-boom! There you go, an official Animal Crossing memory card in your copy of Animal Crossing. These go for, I've seen them upwards of like $20, and actually in the past I've seen them even higher than that, but it's still cool to just find one. Thank you, Zoe, I really appreciate that. Okay, so, looking at everything, I can pretty much tell you that every single one of these items came from Retro World Expo 2018 in Hartford, Connecticut, where I went with Zoe, Dustin, and Joe, and we all got a whole bunch of cool stuff. But of course, I got all the coolest stuff. So let's just start it right out. I went to this one vendor who was selling accessories only. No games, no consoles, just accessories, and I finally got myself the Nintendo GameCube microphone, which I didn't have. This came bundled, I believe, with Mario Party 6. I don't remember if it came bundled with Mario Party 7. However, it is not required for them. It just adds extra mini-games that use the mic, if you happen to have it plugged into your Nintendo GameCube. And so that you can still play 4 players while the mic is plugged in, it actually plugs into the memory card slot. I thought that was a cool design. This thing looks like a vape pen. In fact, on Facebook I made a dumb video of myself using it as a vape pen. I'm sure that I startled my family members, but made anyone who is familiar with this thing laugh. So yeah, if you're into smoking, get yourself a GameCube microphone. Alright, when I go to these conventions, I always pick up something that I definitely should have had, but just didn't, and I already waved it in front of the camera a couple times, but it's this! It's GoldenEye 007, which I didn't have! And when I bought this at the convention, my buddy Joe was standing next to me, and he looked at me and went, "You don't have that?" And Joe doesn't really collect for N64. In fact, he doesn't collect for really anything retro, so, except PlayStation, I will say that. And he was like, even I know that this is like a staple of the Nintendo 64 collection. How do you not have this? And it's just that syndrome I have where I go for the rarer stuff first, because I'll get the regular common stuff later. So, here we go. I finally got GoldenEye 007. If you are anybody who's anybody, you know this game. You didn't even have to play it to understand what this game was. This was one of the first multiplayer first-person shooters, and of course it did have a single-player campaign, but it helped to popularize the first-person shooter all the way back on the Nintendo 64. You can thank games like Halo, Call of Duty, and I'm blanking, there are definitely others, for this. This is why we have first-person shooters. And I'm really glad that I have it now. And somebody really wants my attention. Alright, so, when the Nintendo Entertainment System was popular, Nintendo had a lot of copyright policies, you know, in effect, that stated that you had to pay them a certain amount to manufacture cartridges for the Nintendo Entertainment System. They didn't want a repeat of the crash of '83, where Atari had to just let any old person go ahead and publish games for the Atari 2600 because there really didn't exist any sort of copyright laws about manufacturing cartridges. Nintendo stamped that into effect, and that's why we have companies like Tengen, who actually is Atari. Look that up, I'm not lying. making unlicensed cartridges for the NES to get around that fee and those copyright laws. So this is Clacks by Tengen for Nintendo Entertainment System. Obviously, it's black. Most NES cartridges are gray, so you can tell right away it's kind of different, but this is actually the bottom of the cartridge, so if you hold it correctly, it's upside down. So you can tell right away this is an unlicensed cart. The edge is all weird, and the warnings on the back, it doesn't have the Nintendo seal of quality, but it has the Tengen seal of quality, whatever that is. Clacks is a puzzle game where you are a paddle at the bottom of the... God, I don't even really know how to describe Clacks. You have tiles coming toward you. You're in the foreground and the tiles come at you from the background, and you have to place them on one of 5 different paddles at the bottom and make matches, but it gets really complicated. I love this game. It came out in a whole slew of things, but for the Nintendo Entertainment System, it was unlicensed. But I didn't have it, so I wanted to pick it up. So there it is. It's Clacks. It's Clacks! Whenever I go out to conventions, I typically pick up one game on 2 different consoles, and I don't know if that's something that I do subconsciously or if I've made some sort of pact with myself that I should do that, because last convention I got Tetris Attack on Super Nintendo and Game Boy, and this convention I got Warios Woods on NES and SNES. Don't know why, just didn't have either of them and saw them both, so I figured I would get them. Warios Woods is another puzzle game, actually, and interesting thing about this one in particular, the NES version of Warios Woods, this was the last officially licensed cartridge for the Nintendo Entertainment System published by Nintendo themselves, and the first and only Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge to have an ESRB rating. I love this thing just for that history alone, but of course, since this was released so late in the NES life, it showed up on Super Nintendo also. Actually, I think this is where it was really planned to be. But oh well. Warios Woods is a puzzle game, and it's a very odd puzzle game, I will say. You play as Toad, and you run around the arena, picking up bombs and creatures whose names I forget, trying to match the same color bomb to the same color creature to blow them up and clear the screen. And you can pick up and place and kick and move and climb up walls, and it's really weird. I can't do a good enough job explaining Warios Woods. Just try to check it out. And this is a fantastic game, so definitely pick it up and play it if you have the chance. That's really all I can say about it. I will say, however, that the Super Nintendo version is the superior one. The music is better, the graphics are better, and since it's a puzzle game, the better you can see, and the better you can hear, and the better you can feel, the better you're going to play. This is the definitive version, but pick this up just for the history, or if you, for whatever reason, don't have a Super Nintendo, pick this one up because you just want to play the game. Portability is a gigantic issue in the video gaming world. At least it used to be, until Nintendo said, let's make portability mainstream. And now we have things like the Nintendo 3DS and the Nintendo Switch, which completely revolutionized what we can expect of a handheld console. But handhelds are really an important part of video gaming, and they always have been. One thing that I really enjoy about certain handheld consoles is that instead of just porting a game from a console onto a handheld so that you can play it on the go, there are full experiences that are only available on handhelds, which means that if you have that handheld console, which is typically cheaper than a console, so you're more likely to own it if your parents bought it for you, you actually get to experience those great handheld adventures in full that the console owners don't get to. And one of those is the Powerpuff Girls Paint the Townsville Green. This is actually one of a trio of adventure games, and I believe it was made by BAM Entertainment. This, you play as Buttercup from the Powerpuff Girls, and there are 2 other games. There's Battle Hymn, which features you playing as Bubbles, and Bad Mojo Jojo, which features you playing as Blossom. I love the Powerpuff Girls. I have Bad Mojo Jojo, and now I have Paint the Townsville Green. I'll get Battle Hymn eventually, but I actually grew up renting these games from Blockbuster because I loved the Powerpuff Girls, because no matter what anybody says, it's not a show for girls, it's a show for kids. And if we're being very honest, a lot of the humor in it can be completely absorbed and understood and appreciated by adults also. So anybody who says that Powerpuff Girls is a girls' show, first of all, don't be sexist. And secondly, you have no idea what you're talking about. That show's fantastic. This game is also fantastic. A lot of people think that these games are a little bit blasé. They don't like them too much. I love all three of them, but I think this one is my favorite one. It has extra challenges and things that the other two don't have. Each one has something that the other two don't have. But this one has my favorite stuff in it, and I'm not going to spoil it for you because I feel like you should go play it. If you can only play one of them, definitely pick this one up. Buttercup has always been my favorite Powerpuff Girl, and this is my favorite Powerpuff Girls game, so I guess there's a reason for that. Go figure. Okay, when I said that I got everything in this lot here from Retro World, I forgot about one little trip. Since we went to Buffalo at the very beginning of September / end of August, we actually took a day trip to Canada. We went to Hamilton, Ontario, and I had never been game hunting outside the country before, so I asked Dustin and Joe if they wouldn't mind going to a couple game stores while we were, surveying the Canadian landscape. And they said sure. So we stopped at these two places, and I picked up Deadly Towers for Nintendo Entertainment System, which I didn't have. Very bad game, very common game, but very bad. But, I didn't have it, so picking that up. And I got a Famicom copy of PacMan from this other place in Canada. This one came from Entertainment Overload in Hamilton, and this one came from 1-Up Games in Hamilton. However, Hamilton is gigantic, so they were really far apart from each other. But that's okay, because I was driving, so I took us wherever we needed to go. So I picked both of these up in Hamilton, Ontario, my very first games that I've purchased outside the country, although I do have games from outside the country because I import stuff, and I've actually had friends from other parts of the world bring stuff to me from outside the country, but these are the first games that I myself purchased outside the country. Hell yeah. Okay, back to Retro World Expo. Now I promise everything else here came from Retro World Expo. Here's Tom and Jerry for Super Nintendo. Growing up, I loved this game. I never owned it, but my Aunt Catherine did. She had a Super Nintendo, and actually she was the reason that I ended up getting a Super Nintendo, because when I wanted a game console, my mom and dad noticed she had one, she probably recommended it to them, and then they bought it for me. Even though what I technically wanted was a Sega Genesis. I told my mom I wanted to play Sonic. She didn't know what that meant. I sort of had an understanding of what, first party, third party licensing was like. But I knew that the console I got for Christmas that year was not the right one, so I bitched and moaned, and then I played Super Mario All-Stars and quickly got over it. Anyway, Tom and Jerry, I played this with my Aunt Catherine a lot. Never beat it, still haven't, because I never owned it growing up. I would just dabble with it and play it, with my Aunt Catherine, and we never beat it. We played it together a couple times. She could never beat it, and now I'm finally going to. I've played it a little bit since I bought it at Retro World Expo, but I'm finally going to beat it one of these days coming up. It's a platformer, it's an action platformer, I really enjoy it. So definitely pick that up. If you've played the NES version of Tom and Jerry, it's actually not the same game. This one's better, although I do have a soft spot in my heart for the NES version. That's fantastic too. But Tom and Jerry for Super Nintendo. Let's do it. My favorite thing about game collecting, and especially going to conventions, one of my favorite things I should say, is you have people there who are selling import games in person, which means I don't have to worry about paying large import fees online or worrying about whether or not it'll come to me, because I've gotten a few imports lost in the mail. And of course, shipping things from Japan always takes like 2 weeks, even if they use their EMS, or I believe that stands for Emergency Mail Service, where it ships to you in the soonest amount of time possible. Even that is like a week and a half, which to some people, that's not too long. But we're in the days of Amazon Prime now. That's totally too long. But because there are so many importers at Retro World Expo and other conventions, I get to buy Japanese games right there in person and bring them home right away. So I got the Japanese-only Devil World. This was released, I believe, only in Japan, and it is an action puzzle game developed by Shigeru Miyamoto, the same man who made Mario. And, of course, devil, religion, can't have that in our America. So we never got this game. I don't remember if Europe got this game. I can only assume that they did because they don't have as strict laws as we do. But to my knowledge, I think this is Japan only. I'll have to check up on that. And I'll put it in, right down here. But yeah, Double World. I'm really excited to play this. I mean, of course, as we have always discussed, these games don't touch that shelf until they are tested and are proven to be working. So I have played this a little bit, but other than that, I've actually never really sat down and fully played this game. I never emulated it. I never really knew much about it until I became a collector. However, I'm excited to try it out, and to my knowledge, there are, even with the emulation boom happening because of Nintendo, I think there are still ROMs of this that are around. So definitely give it a shot if you can find it. It's pretty fun, from what I've played and from what I know. So yeah! Devil World! It's so evil. One of the best things about going to conventions is not just that I get to collect, but that I get to collect for stuff that I kind of don't expect to collect for. A lot of people call themselves, I collect for these systems, or I collect for these systems. I collect for pretty much everything. Even the stuff I claim not to collect for, if it comes my way, I take it and I keep it. I really don't get rid of it, so I guess I collect for everything. With that being said, though, there are a couple of collections I'm very low on. Virtual Boy, for example. I bought my Virtual Boy like a billion years ago when I very first started collecting, and I only ever had one game for it, Virtual Boy Wario Land. And I believe, somebody wants my attention, I believe that was in 2012 or 2011 when I bought my Virtual Boy. So up until this year, I only ever had one game for the Virtual Boy. Now granted, that's like 1/22nd of the entire collection, because it fizzled and died. But I finally got a second Virtual Boy game! It's Red Alarm! This game's awful. It's Red Alarm! This game sucks, but it's Red Alarm for Virtual Boy, my second Virtual Boy game. And now I'm 1/11th of the way done with the collection. That's how simplification of fractions works. Red Alarm is a flight simulator / dogfight game. Look, man, playing the Virtual Boy is an exercise in frustration, especially for my eyes, since you can't play it with your glasses on, because then your face won't fit inside of the goggle hole. So trying to adjust my vision without any eyewear or corrective lenses to play this sack of shit is really a strain on the eyes, especially if you know how the Virtual Boy functions and how it presents the image to your eye. It's very interesting science. Definitely go look that up, because if you like video games in any capacity, you might be interested to know how that worked. But yeah, Red Alarm. Am I happy I own this? Of course I am. But I probably won't play it very often. Come over and you can play it instead. I collect console variants. I collect label variants. I collect controller variants. I collect variants of tons of stuff. With that being said, I own like a billion different consoles, and they're all just, one console. I have 2 Atari 2600s, 3 GameCubes, the list goes on. 2 NESs, 2 Super Nintendos. We can just go on forever. But I have one more Atari 2600 now, so now I have 3. Because at Retro World Expo, I bought the very last variant ever released of the Atari 2600, the Atari 2600 Junior. This gives the Atari 2600 a design more akin to the later releases by Atari, the 5200 and 7800. And of course, with that being said, this is way more affordable, so anybody who still didn't have an Atari 2600 by that time could finally afford one even cheaper. So Atari would still make money off of the games that weren't selling very well. So there it is, the Atari 2600 Junior. This is actually a pretty cool console to own because it's incredibly uncommon to find. I wouldn't call it rare. I have seen it in person a couple times before, but this was the first time somebody was only asking $30 for it. And it came with a controller and all the hookups, and even a game. However, the game that I got was a game I already owned because all of the games he said were eligible to be taken with this were all games I already had. So I got a game that I already owned, and I ended up turning it over to somebody else I knew who needed it totally for free because that's just the nice type of guy I am. Also, the game was worth like $1, so... So yeah, Atari 2600 Junior. Really happy I own this. In fact, the funny story, I was putting this in my backpack because the guy handed it to me, so I couldn't get to my wallet because everything was in my hands. So I took off my backpack and I went to put it in, and as I went to put my backpack back on my back, the guy got a little uppity because he was like, "You haven't paid me yet." "I'm about to pay you, my dude. Don't worry about it. I had my hands full. I can't take my wallet out if my hands are full." But I totally paid him, and I walked away, kind of laughing at myself a little bit because I should have said, hang on, before you hand that to me, let me pay you, which would have been the right thing to do. If you're ever in a situation where there's money involved, the person giving the money should always give it first before they accept the goods. That's just my opinion. But in this situation, he handed them to me, and I just didn't have the foresight to say, well, wait, let me pay you. I took them and I put them in my backpack so that I could get to my wallet. Be that as it may, I still did pay for it, and I walked away not having stolen anything, and what I did not steal was this beautiful piece of technology. It kissed back, did you see? Common games. I don't own them because I take time away from getting common games so that I can get rare games instead, which means I picked up another common game that I should have owned already, but didn't! It's Mach Rider! Mach Rider is a motorcycle racing game for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's actually made by Nintendo, and music from Mach Rider can be found in the Super Smash Bros. Series of games. This is actually an official black box title, and if my memory serves me correctly, it is the only game in the programmable series, which isn't much of a series, since there's only one game in it, although I could be wrong about that. I'll put that down here as well. You can tell how far my studying goes sometimes. I know a lot about dumb stuff, and I know very little about important stuff, although you might not think this is so important. It's important to me. But yeah, Mach Rider. There's not much else I can say about it because if we're being very honest, I don't like this game. Some people do. Some people really do. I don't think it's that fun. I don't think it's aged very well, but it's an important title to have, so I'm happy that I finally have it. And you're happy that I own you too, aren't you? Alright, more things I picked up. It's Galaxian. I got Galaxian. It's a Famicom game. If you don't know Galaxian, it's the prequel to Galaga, which more of you might understand and know. But yeah, it's Galaxian on Famicom. It's really all I can say about it, to be honest. It's a space shooter. Galaxian is an arcade game that came out in 1979 and rivaled Space Invaders. In fact, if you ask me, this is superior to Space Invaders. But yeah, it's Galaxian. It's a lot of fun. Pick up and play a copy of Galaxian. It's available on, like, everything. You can buy a refrigerator and it plays Galaxian. Trust me. I know. I'm a scientist. We've talked about Sega Master System before because I've bought a few Sega Master System games. And that's really all I can say about that because I don't own very many. But every time I go to a convention, I try to pick up at least one, so that eventually I'll have a decent Sega Master System collection. Well, this time, I scored a complete copy of Afterburner for Sega Master System. It is complete, if I can open it, because it gives me a little trouble. But yeah, there's everything. Afterburner! I actually bundled this with something else so that I could get that something else cheaper, which I'll talk about right now, as soon as I explain that Afterburner is an arcade title that was ported to the Sega Master System. It is a dogfight/racing airplane game. It's actually really fun. I like it. And a lot of people do. It's very important to video game history. It has some great graphics for the time, too. So, yeah, definitely give this a shot. But let's talk about that other thing I picked up along with Afterburner, because it's freaking awesome. And that freaking awesome thing was King of Kings: The Early Years. This is an unlicensed NES game, as evidenced by the black color and strange just air about it. It's a Bible game, actually. This company called Wisdom Tree manufactured tons of Bible-themed games for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And of course, they had to be unlicensed because Nintendo would never allow for religious iconography in video gaming, except in Castlevania. This game is rare, and it's the type of rare that actually isn't expensive, it's just hard to find. So for 15 bucks, I was actually able to pick this up at Retro World Expo, and this cartridge is just a hunk of shit. Not only is the game stupid and boring because it's a Bible game, and I'm not just saying that because I'm not a Christian. I know tons of Christians who think this game is a ton of shit. But the cartridge itself is awful. It has this weird, like, dip in here, and it says press here, right here, because, you know, the original Nintendo Entertainment System is a side loader. So this sticks out, and it says press here, picking, and then you press it into place. I use a top loader, so it just kind of sits in like that. But because I use a top loader, it's actually a tighter fit, and this cartridge is slightly, very slightly, thicker than a regular Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge. So I actually have to, like, really, really slowly wedge it in there, or I feel like I might break something. But that's okay, because I'm barely going to play this thing, because it sucks. If you are a Christian and you enjoy this game, then more power to you. I don't think that's a bad thing. But I, and many other people, and Christians also, who play video games, don't like this game. It's not fun. So, what's the point of a game that isn't fun? In any case, I am super happy that I own this because, again, it's rare. And a rare game in my collection means that I have taken one step toward doing something right with my life. King of Kings, the early years. Look that up, too, if you want to punch yourself in the face for a couple hours. When the Wii first came out, I didn't have very many games for it. Mostly because I wasn't working, so I couldn't really afford $60 a game. Actually, it was $50 back then. And the Wii was a gift from somebody, so I didn't buy the Wii. I wasn't expecting to buy a Wii. They were expensive and they were hard to find back then. So I never got WarioWare Smooth Moves, which I really wanted, but I could never afford it. So, finally got it now! I really enjoy that, actually. There is one thing about this particular copy that bugs the crap out of me, but for the price they were asking, I couldn't say no. And we've talked about this before. I hate label damage, I hate sticker damage, I hate anything like that. Some loser wrote on the disc! You can't get that off! You might damage the disc! Whoever you are, DA, District Attorney, you've desperately annoyed me. To give you a little bit of insight into what my childhood was like growing up, my sister and I used to play a bunch of video games together from time to time, and every now and then I would bring a game home and play it that she would actually like. And one of those games was Gex 64 Enter the Gecko. So when I brought this game home and showed my sister, she went nuts, because it was another chance for us to revisit an old classic. It's Gex 1 for PlayStation. I took this out of my backpack and she went, "Oh my god, it's Gex!" Yeah, it's a platformer starring Gex. Gex is radical. If you've played any Gex games, you probably have one of two opinions. This is really cheesy and I don't like it, or this is so cheesy it's fantastic. Gex is great. I don't want to say too much about it because if I do, then maybe you won't pick it up and play it. So definitely go out and play Gex. But my personal recommendation is to play either Gex Enter the Gecko on PlayStation, or the N64 counterpart to it, Gex 64 Enter the Gecko. They're the same game, just, 64. So, last year when I first started making these pickup videos, I went to Video Game Trading Post with my buddy Tyler, and I picked up Mario's Early Years Preschool Fun for Super Nintendo. And I talked about how, there are a bunch of Mario edutainment titles for the Super Nintendo. So I picked up one more at Retro World this year. I got Mario's Early Years Fun with Letters. So now I'm only missing Fun with Numbers, and then I'll have all 5. The other 2 being Mario's Missing and Mario's Time Machine. So yeah, Mario's Early Years Fun with Letters. I bet you can guess just by the title what it's all about. So I won't bother going into much detail. All I'll say is this game is pretty uncommon, so I'm really happy to own it. One more unlicensed game. A lot of people don't like this next game, but it's actually my favorite game in this franchise. And that's the PacMan franchise. And my favorite PacMan game is Pac-Mania. Hell yeah! Pac-Mania rocks, man! Now, some of you might think, if you know me, that my favorite game in the franchise is Ms. Pac-Man. Not so. If we don't count Pac-Mania, then yeah, Ms. Pac-Man, 100%. In fact, it's the game in the series I'm best at. But Pac-Mania is my favorite. I love the music, I love the atmosphere, I love the graphics. This isn't the best version of, Pac-Mania on console. That's probably the Sega Genesis version, which is licensed. And of course, the arcade version is the best. But this is pretty easy to come by. I see it a lot, so it's not super uncommon, but I didn't own it. So Pac-Mania for NES was actually unlicensed, and it's made, of course, by Tengen, who seems to make a lot of unlicensed games for the NES, because, as I described earlier, Tengen is Atari, and Atari ain't taking bullshit from no one, including no Nintendo. So yeah, so we have an unlicensed Pac-Mania for the NES. Go figure. Pac-Mania is great. It's Pac-Man, but it's isometric, and you can jump over the ghosts. But be careful, because sometimes they jump back. Music in Super Smash Bros. Regarding Pac-Man, or representing the Pac-Man franchise, a lot of it actually comes from Pac-Mania. And many people might not know that, because how many people have played Pac-Mania? How many people even know this game exists? Except maybe collectors. Pac-Mania rocks. Play Pac-Mania before I find you and force you to. We've reached the end. The end of the rope with which I will hang myself, the rope labeled Video Game Collecting. When I went to Canada with Joe and Dustin, I was on the lookout for something very specific, which unfortunately I didn't find. And that thing was the Wii Mini, also known as the Model 2 Wii, which was released in Canada, and it is a top-loading Wii that is cheaper, and so more people could afford it. It was released in Europe, and in Japan, and in America, but in all three of those regions, it was a very short-lived lifespan. It actually thrived more in Canada, which is why I thought to look for it there. Didn't find it. Found it at Retro World Expo here in America, though. This is a Wii Mini. It came in a few different colors, but this is the red and black one. Honestly, this thing's pretty ugly. I don't like the fact that the whole top is black, and then the whole rest of the unit is red. Just make the whole thing red, or make the whole thing black. This looks really weird to me, even though my favorite color is red. This just looks strange, having just the black top with the red sides. It is a top loader, so if I do this, you can see that it opens like any regular game console from before the Wii was invented. Like the GameCube or PlayStation's 2 and 1, it's a top-loading console. It does have all your regular hookups for a sensor bar, so you can totally use Wii remotes with this, and it is motion capable. It's just that this unit itself doesn't have any fancy lights. As far to my knowledge, it is not backwards compatible because it doesn't have any GameCube ports on it, and I don't think you can buy a GameCube adapter for it. So this plays strictly Wii games. And yeah, this is something a lot of people don't know about either. Joe and Dustin certainly didn't when I told them about it. And I've been looking for this for a while, actually, but I'd never had any luck, especially because it had a very limited run here in the United States. When we went to Canada, I couldn't find it. So I just kind of, gave up. I was actually at a panel at Retro World Expo watching somebody, talk about games. It was actually the video game historian panel, the gaming historian panel. And I got a text from Joe. He was still downstairs on the exhibitor floor, and he said, "They have a Wii Mini here. It's $50. Get your fucking ass down here." And I went, "Stand there and don't move and don't let anyone else buy it." And Joe texted me back, and he was like, "The guy's really trying to push it. He's trying to get somebody to buy it." And I'm like, "Tell him that you have somebody interested upstairs who will buy it, and he'll come right down." I came downstairs. I did the deal immediately. I actually asked him if he would consider 40. He was asking 50, and I told him, I'll buy it right now. He said, "I can do 45. I said, "You know what? That's fine, because I've seen this for more than that." So, the Wii Mini! Yes! Probably my favorite pickup of the whole convention and of the entirety of September. Thank you, by the way, Joe. When I reached into my wallet to pay the gentleman, I realized I didn't have enough money. So Joe covered the rest of the bill, and I paid Joe back. He's a good guy, a great friend, and this is a great find. Hell yeah. And that'll do it for September. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and I'm really happy that it's still going strong. This is probably, as I've said before, one of the most consistent things I've ever done with my YouTube channel. Yes, I'm going to finish Super Mario 64, and I'm going to start a new project, and yes, I'm almost done with my video about my new album, my musical album. So, expect that. And as I take one last sip of this beautiful smoothie here, I will say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. Guys, have a pleasant day, and I'll be back next month with some more video games. Maybe even some heavy hitters. Mostly because right now it's October already, and I already know I have something excellent to talk about next month that I just got. Thank you so much. Take it easy.